People in Birmingham, Michigan know how to have a good time. We live in a vibrant city with the warm heart of a small town. We have a wide variety of small shops and boutiques that cater to differing tastes. Popular restaurants dot the city for our dining pleasure. Whether one's taste is ethnic or exotic or everyday all-American, or whether you think dining al fresco is the greatest thing under the sun, we can meet it.
Ours is a city of beautiful, people-friendly, children-friendly parks and playgrounds, of schools that recognize the past while preparing today's children for tomorrow's challenges, of welcoming churches, quiet places for worship and fellowship, and of neighborhoods that reflect the diversity of Birmingham families. We're a thriving community of people, places, and events. But for a few moments, let's take a look back to not so long ago.
The Birmingham story begins in the early years of the 19th century, when stretching forth from the Detroit River, a narrow Indian trail enabled pioneers on horseback to penetrate ever deeper into the area that someday was to become Birmingham. Lewis Cass, a man of vision and governor of the Michigan Territory, urged people to settle here because of the fertile land and plentiful water. With the War of 1812 over and the Indians less hostile, Governor Cass led a group of bold pioneers up the Saginaw Trail and showed them the opportunities to prosper on the land. Those early settlers did come, following the Saginaw Trail. It sliced through forests, swamps, hills, and valleys. We now know that trail as Woodward Avenue. A settlement, the forerunner of Birmingham, was established some 16 miles north of the Detroit River. The first to buy land there in December of 1818 was Elijah Willits. It took a tough hide to brave the wilderness. On the same day that Willits bought his acreage, John Hamilton bought his. Hamilton later transported families and goods to the settlement, and he also opened a tavern. On his heels came Benjamin K. Pierce, a U.S. Army officer, and John W. Hunter. Friends called John by his middle name, West. West Hunter holds the distinction of being the first to build a log cabin. He later opened a foundry. Hunter, Willits, Hamilton, and Pierce had each bought quarter sections that touched at a point we now know as Maple and Pierce. 80 years ago, it looked like this, and today, it looks like this.
Tales of not so long ago were often told by master storyteller, shopkeeper, and violinist, the late Merritt Olson. In the midst of granite and marble in Greenwood Cemetery and in front of enthralled children, Olson recalled Birmingham's people and our past.
Ellen Peabody, in her late years, lived right next door to us on Willett, and she was our grandma just like she was grandma to her own grandchildren. And we remember Grandma Peabody was so frightened of an electric storm, and Dad knew it, so if it was in the night, he'd get up and snap on a light, for she had told him that she always felt better if she knew somebody else was up.
Yes, Merritt Olson had a fund of tales. At times, he'd talk about Dr. Ziba Swan, who provided the land for the first school for village children, and also set aside a half-acre of his land for the beginning of Greenwood Cemetery. Or the Baldwins, who gave us the indomitable, unflappable, feisty Martha Baldwin. She was a strong-willed lady who lived and kept a tight rein on the last half of the 19th century and into the 20th. She was always on the go, either on foot or in her fancy buggy.
Now there's the lady that probably gave as much to Birmingham as any other person in money and ideas and foresight, Martha Baldwin. She was way ahead of her time. She had the idea that Birmingham should have a waterworks. She detested the public wells that were uptown, and she fought for years to get a waterworks.
The Baldwin name lives on in Baldwin Street, the old Baldwin School, the Baldwin Library. To see it built, Mattie fought unsuccessfully for years, but it now stands in her memory. This is when its entrance was on Martin Street, and as it is today, with its front door on Merrill. And Baldwin House, the new and attractive apartments near the center of town. Yes, the names of Birmingham's past live on.
Here's the Allen House, a popular gathering spot for family celebrations. And named after Horace Barnum is the former Barnum School, now a satellite of Beaumont Hospital. Raynal, the name of 3 generations of doctors. Ebenezer, then Charles, then George. West Hunter, who built the first foundry in the settlement, left us the legacy of his home. It's the Hunter House that stands on land Elijah Willits bought. It's now an historical museum. We're all familiar with Hunter Boulevard bisecting our city, but not its heart. Other early residents are also remembered in our streets. Willits, Hamilton, Pierce, Peabody, Quarton, Merrill, Raynal. There's no street named after the Blakesley family, but some are named after family members: George, Anne, Frank, and Floyd. Merritt Olson certainly brought the past to life. And today, Pat Andrews, a former elementary school teacher, does the same. She guides costumed school children pretending to be Birmingham's early settlers.
The Blakesley children love to read these books. They're over 100 years old. Oh, here comes Mr. Hunter with his friend Mr. Merrill.
Hello, everybody. Russell just bought my foundry.
You did?
Yes, I think our town is going to have a lot of factories someday, like Birmingham, England. What about naming our town Birmingham?
That's a great idea, Mr. Merrill.
Fine. All of our Birmingham sign up tomorrow morning. Goodbye.
So that's how Birmingham got its name.
Yes, we kept the name, but we never became an industrial center.
We had an earlier nickname, too, Piety Hill. Some say it's because we had so many churches. Others say, with tongue-in-cheek, it's because we had so many taverns. This was our first community house in Birmingham, at Maple and Bates. As its outreach expanded, so did its facilities, newly located at Bates and Townsend. Now, who was the driving force behind the community house? The late Ruth Shane, civic and cultural leader and wife of Charles Shane.
Well, when we went into the community house, I suggested that we have a board of 15 people, 8 of whom would be women and 7 of whom would be men. And that's the first time we got men on the community house board. Some of those who had given the money for the land. You can't imagine how big that thing looked to me when it was built. It was just breathtaking to me to think that we had a building in Birmingham that was bigger than anything we had there.
Enlarged once again on Bates under the leadership of Gail Caldwell, the community house is ever mindful of the debt it owes to Ruth Shane.
The community house has remained true to its mission to serve people of all backgrounds and ages. Our activities are here for young children, teenagers, adults, families, and singles. We reach out continually to meet the changing needs of our community.
The Birmingham Area Seniors Coordinating Council, or BASC, also offers outreach to our senior citizens through volunteer services. Birmingham has always been a family-oriented community, and our people enjoy the many amenities of the town. Again, let's meet some of those early families and individuals. Birmingham boosters all. Here's Charles Shane. a man of vigor and husband of Ruth.
Charlie Shane was instrumental in promoting the purchase of that property for the City Hall, Shane Park, the library. Charlie Shane had a dream that the village should own from Pierce Street all the way to Southfield.
Here is the Groves family that gave its name to a fine high school in the Birmingham School District. The Charles Schlock family. Charles was a merchant on Woodward Avenue. Our families are the lifeblood, supporting the healthy economy of our town. They patronize fine stores of every kind. And 2 major department stores in the downtown shopping area. But let's take a look back to not so long ago. Back then, people shopped at Peabody's or John Hanna's General Stores and Levinson's Birmingham department store. Then, as today, our city was alive with commerce. Birmingham Mills, flour for the staff of life. Produce to go with it at Halleck Grocery. And something for the youngster. Charles Shane's drugstore for prescriptions. And McBride's for a soda. Drugs and sundries, meats and poultry. Every kind of hardware at Blakesley's. For every job of work at Houston's. Everything from shoe repair to cigars, pipes, and tobacco. Looking for property? Try Leinbach Humphrey. Farm implements? Try Hiram Parks. Home appliances? Hawthorne Electric has them. Mellon Wright Stevens sold lumber, coal, and builder supplies. Want a harness? See O'Neill. Horse needs a shoe? Trot him to J.M. Clement. Ride in style in someone else's buggy. Shops abounded in Birmingham, and if you couldn't find it in the town's array, people said, try Schlock's. And the Weir Smith Trucking Company built the first 4-wheel drive vehicle in the United States.
But everything was not all uptown. Birmingham was also rural, a community surrounded by fertile farmland. Autumn threshing was a familiar sight. These farmers came from miles around to help Dick Irwin with his harvest. This was Dick Irwin's farm, located at what is now the corner of Lincoln and Southfield. Rich soil and a constant supply of water made farming profitable. Water was indeed plentiful, and the boys loved it. When winter came, the mill pond was ripe for cutting ice. Nature's own refrigeration system called for hardy horses and hardier men. But whatever the weather, people of yesteryear hitched up the buggy and headed forth. Maybe one horse pulled the rig, or a team did the job. Horsepower got you there. What happened to this kind of horsepower? It changed to a different type, the horseless carriage. Soon Birmingham moved on swifter wheels. Goods got transported, cars got better looking. They say Dr. Charles Raynal gave up driving because his car wouldn't stop when he yelled, "Whoa!" Here's what family transportation looked like in the 1920s. This fellow would soon lose his job to a traffic light. Competing with motor cars were streetcars. This was a regular sight on our streets beginning before World War I and continuing through 1931. And this was the DUR waiting room on Woodward Avenue between Maple and Merrill. People rode trains, too. The Grand Trunk Depot stood at Hunter and Maple.
I spent a lot of my time at the Grand Trunk Depot because it was right next door to our house. The trains fascinated me, they still do. I do remember that whenever the trains came in, there was a lot of excitement. Many of the citizens would come down to see the train come in. The farmers would bring their milk in the morning to ship to Detroit, and then they would pick up their empty milk cans, and most of the bread that was sold in Birmingham at that time came out on the morning train.
At that time, the Grand Trunk tracks ran along Hunter. Here's how the boulevard looked then. Later, the tracks were moved to Eaton Street. This was the Grand Trunk station then. Now it's a popular restaurant, with a pleasant area for outdoor dining. Another structure of the past also became a restaurant. Remember the source of this one? That's right, yesterday's Edison building. Even this structure was an update. This one even had its name in lights.
In 1864, Birmingham sent its sons to serve in the Union Army during the Civil War, just as it has sent its sons and daughters to serve in every war since. This monument to our sons in the Grand Army of the Republic first stood on Woodward Avenue. Then it was moved to Greenwood Cemetery. The four sides commemorate those who gave their lives, not only our sons, but those from surrounding communities as well. Now it rests on the grounds of our City Hall. It marks a proud chapter in our history. Birmingham has always been well governed. Our renovated City Hall, housing all our municipal activities, including the police department, is a reflection of our past. Library Hall, built in the 1890s at Woodward and Maple, housed many activities besides a library.
And upstairs was used as a public meeting hall that had plays and lectures. It was a cultural center. That building housed the fire department, the police department, and around to the west was the city offices, and in behind all of that was a jail, and that was quite a sizable building. And I stopped to think of all the stuff they had in there.
Today, one of our most important municipal activities is the police department, dedicated to our public and private safety. So too was it in our past. As important as the police was Birmingham's volunteer fire department.
Now this is the Birmingham Fire Department that was organized on Friday, the 13th of August, 1913. And that's all the equipment they had was 2 hose carts. They didn't even have a ladder. They just trusted when they got out in the neighborhood, somebody would have a ladder hanging out back.
Friday the 13th, eh? That crew of stalwarts wasn't superstitious. They were ready to head out and tackle any blaze. They hoped the truck, which they called the June Bug, wouldn't roll over. There were plenty of fires to put out, too. This tower was used for drying the hoses, and the fire bell at the top called the volunteers to action. It foreshadowed Birmingham's fine fire stations of today, also dedicated to our public and private safety. Here's a telephone building of yesteryear.
My father must have been the first telephone subscriber because he had number 1, and he had it for many, many years. The first switchboard was just in the center of Whitehead and Mitchell's drugstore, and it was only operated just during the daytime.
Both buildings also housed the Birmingham Eccentric. That early paper was founded by Almiron Whitehead and George Mitchell. They belonged to a club they called the Eccentrics. Today, journalists with the Eccentric call this place home. Birmingham has always put out the welcome mat for visitors.
Or for those who are just traveling through, Birmingham has always said, "Make yourselves at home." Those words were a hallmark of the famous National Hotel. This was the Chateau Tea Room.
The structure was a huge sandstone mansion that was built there. We lived in the upstairs part of it, and the attic was so large that we could even have a basketball court in the attic. That was quite a fabulous place.
Farmers came to W.E. Smith's milling company to get lumber and planks, and they came to get feed for their cattle and flour for their bread. Know what it later became? An extremely popular market. But that's not all. Today, it's a restaurant, once destroyed by fire and then rebuilt. From the log cabins and farms of our founding fathers and upwards through the years, Birmingham people were, and still are, builders. Some built quite fancy, like William H. Smith on East Maple. Some were plain, but with accents like a bay window. I'll bet those children liked to curl up on the window seat. Some were formal, with an ornate roof treatment. As it is today, there were great contrasts between a house and the house next door. Many have become historic landmarks, like the Ford Peabody home at Woodward and Brown. It was built in the 1870s. Built about the same time was the home of Frank Hagerman, merchant and banker. Bay windows were prevalent. Some were quite rural, like the old Courton homestead. This was Gilbert Watkins' pony farm.
They imported ponies directly from the Shetland Islands off Scotland. They bred and raised many ponies on their farm at Maple between the Old Mill Pond and Chesterfield. These Shetland ponies were sold and shipped all over the United States. My, how those children loved those ponies.
Just as some homes were farms, some were citified. This one was at Maple and Bates. Houses became both utilitarian and ornate, like the George H. Mitchell home. The architecture of the Blakesley home on Maple and Pierce was a study in bold vertical lines and a roof with an attitude. Charming frame houses clustered at the center of the village. As the town expanded, farmland on the outskirts gave way to subdivisions. Homes began to stretch out. Lumber was giving way to more and more brick. Designs were limited only by the imagination of an architect or builder or homeowner. Today, Birmingham continues to build, and again, architecture is limited only by fancy. Homes, condominiums, apartments, commercial buildings, stores, parking structures, and even an ice arena for skating and hockey.
Birmingham youth has always been interested in sports. So what has Zimmerman's Mill got to do with that? It made baseball bats, sluggers. We had not only baseball, but basketball too. Here are the 9th grade slam dunkers of Barnum School over 60 years ago. And here's the girls' basketball team of 1922. This is the football team of the Old Hill School, class of 1906. Notice the difference in uniforms? That's because each player had to furnish his own. The Baldwin High football team, the 1939 TV AA champs. The 1942 Birmingham High track team, the state Class B champions in 1933, 36, 37, and 42. But everything was not all sport.
From its beginnings, Birmingham set its sights on education. This was the first public schoolhouse. The Allen House stands on this spot today. This was the Old Hill School on the corner of Chester and Martin.
The country school children all came into the 9th grade. Some of them came horseback, and at that time there was a DOR streetcar. They came on that. And before that, they managed to have a horse at their disposal, and they would come 2 or 3 in one carriage. Came in the winter, and there was a big barn across Martin on the north side, a big brick barn, and they used to pay 10 cents a day to put their horses in that barn so they could have a place to keep them out of the weather.
This is the Hill School Assembly Room. Younger children shared the same schoolhouse. And here is the 1902 senior class of Hill School. Harry Allen, Knox Poppleton, and George Purdy were members of this class. The 9th grade at Hill School, 1914. Perhaps some of these lads fought in World War I. C.R. Bemis, superintendent of schools. They say he was a bear-like man who handled kids like a teddy bear. Today, our high standards of education live on in Birmingham's fine schools, dedicated teachers, and the most modern, sophisticated equipment. But like today, our people in the past enjoyed unsophisticated things too, like an old-fashioned parade. Sometimes the parade was on foot, sometimes on wheels. The more patriotic, the better. Even children got in the act. Young people's orchestras were always ready to oblige with a concert. So were adults. These Birmingham ladies are set for an excursion to Put-in-Bay, a popular entertainment of the time. Nearly everyone turned out for Chautauqua.
About the time I started school, the Chautauqua came to town, and on the south side of the Hill School building and out west in the playground, they put up this tent, and it had chairs, and they had lectures and educational programs for the children, daytime programs and educational programs at night, and entertainment for the adults. And I remember going.
Everyone liked movies and stage plays, too. This is the old family theater. The Birmingham Theater came later. It showed motion pictures well into the 50s, and then converted to Broadway stage plays and musicals. And now, completely restored to its Art Deco beginnings, it's an 8-screen cinema complex. We've enjoyed our own intimate playhouse, too, the Village Players of Birmingham. At its three-quarter century mark, it's one of the oldest amateur theater groups in the country. As in the past, the Village Players continue staging dramas, comedies, and musicals.
Our city boasts fine art galleries. Sculptures mark our corners and parks. And in the winter, they're carved in ice. This masterpiece by Marshall Fredericks rises in the center of Cheyne Park. For art lovers, 2 festivals are held annually in Cheyne Park. And Cheyne Park is the scene of weekly outdoor concerts throughout the summer. Yes, Birmingham people really enjoy family entertainment.
Thank you so much.
But, like the early settlers of our town, they also appreciate quiet moments to pause and reflect.
Let us remember the past and the people of stamina and vision who pioneered here.
We know that change is inevitable, and that what happens today will be history tomorrow.
Our past is glorious, yes, but the best is yet to be.